So, so we're here with Bill Stewart today, and I'm Daniel Yates, and I'm a scientist, but Bill Stewart, if you don't know who he is, you need to look him up. We're going to try to speed this along, but this guy wears more hats than, he's a cosmonaut, a freaking family therapist, a reptile keeper. He lives in a snake. He does everything.
I want to wear a new hat where I do that thing in Iceland where they like ferment the shark and it turns into like a cheese. I'm just playing.
Okay. So I originally had this plan for Lucas because he's a trauma therapist. You are a family therapist.
Yes.
And he couldn't make it, and it's been a big thing to try to get him on to do that. He's got his own podcast. So that's a big thing for him. So we're going to see. So Lucas, if you're listening, if you think we've said something wrong, go ahead and you can still come on and we can still have a conversation, because the more information, the better. Today,
I would love to be on with Lucas. I never met Lucas, but I love, processing with other trauma therapists and
so
I would definitely love a conversation with him.
So today what we're going to do is we're going to try to summarize the study that I have done so far with empathy and the reptile community. And then we're going to move on to trauma and actual things about trauma. But I don't like so everybody's different. So you have to take different approaches, because that's so true. And it's not as helpful. So where can we start to look depending on the type of people? And then we want to make sure that we do get into at the end why reptiles may actually be good for mental health, at least.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Okay, so we want to leave off with a positive. That's where we're headed. Okay, so I've learned a ton from my study here. Things like, so a good Facebook group for like friggin' reptiles or anything. Management skills. The better the management skills, the better the group.
That's what you figured out in your research?
Yeah, just like I've done research in management before, actually in the fast food industry, and it just overlapped perfectly with the episode I did with the people who actually ran Facebook groups that were actually good groups.
Okay, so your hypothesis that you proved was that people that have management experience are going to admin and facilitate a better group. But what makes the group better? Is it that there's more healthy content, less?
Yes, it's everything. It's what makes a good management, not a good leader. Because if you're a good leader, that's going to be a great thing. That's going to push it even further. But a good management, being open-minded, being creative, allowing your people to run and giving them power, but actually giving them responsibility too, things like this. And that really has showed so far. And it's not that they personally are the best at what they do. It's that because they have good management style, they bring in better and they stay.
Okay. I don't know if you want to say this on the podcast. But what are some of the better Facebook groups that you've seen?
It's interesting. Dragon Smart is actually a really good one, but the really good administrators left because she did something they didn't approve of. And so they left in droves. And it was very interesting how that worked. Snake Discovery is an actual Snake Discovery fan page is an actual good one. There's a lot of them out there that are actually pretty decent. I'm actually finding the herping ones pretty decent.
There's that Herping the Globe Facebook page where I'm in a group called Herping the Globe, and it's a bunch of people who are taking pictures of these animals in the wild, and it's a very simple, here's a picture of this snake, here's a scientific name, and here's where I found the picture. And it's awesome because people are taking,
you know what iNatural is, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Facebook group of that sort of. That's a really cool group because you get to see some really beautiful pictures from animals, and you see them in captivity. And I love seeing these animals in captivity, but to see them in the wild, like someone recently, I think it was in that group where someone actually found Borneo earless monitors in Borneo and has like pictures of them in the wild in Borneo. Is really, really rad.
That's cool. The group that I'm in, the herping group, I think it might even be a herping in Utah. It's one or the other.
Okay.
But they had this like clip. Instead of doing a video, they had different clips of a frog either mating or fighting with another frog. And it was so freaking cool because it wasn't just this video. It was all these little individual clips that you get to see this, like, just fight. Like, I don't know if it was mating or fighting, but it was so cool. And then they had some snakes and that stuff. But no, I'm like, that's a good group.
I want to see that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And the positive sides to that stuff, because you see that when you do contribute positive, it comes out positive, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's a big part of Facebook. I was on another podcast. I was on Reptile Studio last night with Greg and Brian, and we were kind of talking about the pros and cons of Facebook and the toxicity of Facebook. But Facebook's just a tool. Facebook's just a thing. It's not, a screwdriver is not good or bad. How you use the screwdriver is good or bad. And how you use social media and the people that are using social media is what's good or bad.
That's the point of my podcasts.
Oh, I just jumped. Spoilers.
Oh, no, that's fine. And this won't come out before they did.
Okay.
Like, didn't they do their lives? No, Reptile Studio?
No, Reptile Studio, yeah. No, okay. That's not, it wasn't a spoiler.
Then I might beat them out. Then I might actually beat them out, yeah.
Well, we talked about 8 million other things, but that was one of the...
I remember what I wanted to say before. Roy?
Yeah, Roy.
He was the guy from Herpetological.
Yeah.
He was the guy with the monkey lizards.
Oh, that was Roy?
Yeah, they're monkey anoles.
Yeah, they're monkey anoles? Okay.
Yeah, but he kept calling them monkey lizards. And I'm like, what is that? And so I looked it up, and it was a Star Wars character. That's where you're the monkey lizard. I still have that in my phone. It's Bill Stewart, the monkey lizard.
Oh, that's great.
I know, right? I love that you like. We need to start calling you that. That's your nickname. You need to get that tattoo.
Monkey lizard?
Monkey lizard.
Are you thinking of the little dude that sat on Jabba the Hutt?
Yeah. I was surprised when you knew his name. It's like, no, you're everywhere. But but it's just like everywhere in hobo culture. It's so, I just realized I just missed. So for the audience, I realized that as I talk, I'm missing words, like letters of words. I just realized I just did that. I'm going to try to stop doing that so that you guys can have a more pleasant experience, because I realize that my brain is moving faster than my words.
I've done that before. But what word did you just mess up? Because there is a word I noticed you messed up.
I don't know exactly what word I messed up, but I know I did. I just, I heard it, and it was like it missed like half the word.
I think I've seen you say herbiculture. Like HERBA culture, like herbs, like herbs.
Yeah, that's just I have trouble pronouncing
herpetological.
That's what I'm always gonna have trouble with.
It's a funky one. You're good. I'm not teasing you.
Oh yeah, no. I go home and cry because of people like you all the time.
Get the word right, or else, man. You better pronounce that herpetological culture word.
I can tell you right now, I have missed you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. I've been so busy. I'm hard to get a hold of sometimes, but it's good to talk to you. And I'll be at Schaumburg in July, so I'll see you there, man.
Maybe. I don't know if I'll be in Schaumburg. I'm gonna try to make it. But if you're in St. Louis, but I'm gonna see if I can.
That's right. St. Louis is the show you're at. I thought you were.
But I'm gonna see if I can make Schaumburg because I want to go see Mike.
Yeah.
So some of the other stuff, I had Daniel Parker on, so we're going to be referring to that, but I haven't published it because I really wanted you to see that second half so you could actually get more info on what I'm thinking, why I think some of the things I think. And so, oh God, I'm trying to go so fast that I'm hitting roadblocks.
Go so fast. We have lots of time, dude. We have lots of time.
But I was talking about the fact that I had two guys on, Brady Nelson, who breeds blue tongue. Richie, what's her name? Natalie Richie. You know her. She's really awesome. Kind of an older lady, breeds weird stuff like
Kristen.
Yeah.
Kristen Nelson Richards.
Yes.
Yeah. He's incredibly cool.
Yeah, friends with her and Bradley's. So I've gotten to know him. Okay. He's awesome. He, like I say, breeds blue tongues. And then another guy I've gotten to know, JP Exotics. JP, the guy that first bred Savannah monitors in America. That guy.
Oh yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was on. God, what was that other show that your friend, the guy from Illinois, with the God, I can't think of his Lizard Brain. Oh, yeah, he was on Lizard Brain once.
Yes.
And I had those two on at the same time. I screwed up the interview because I didn't record the second half because I didn't actually know what the hell I was doing properly. So I had them back on, but that later on that night, those two were so passionate, I was almost left out of the conversation. It was so wonderful. And then I watched, God, what was it? That night I watched Peyton Manning and Eli Manning interview Tom Brady.
Oh, weird. Okay.
What was the most interesting thing about that? Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were like Bradley and JC. They were so passionate that Eli basically got like booted from the conversation. It literally was that. And I'm sitting in my head going, why is this? Why? And I'm sitting here thinking in my head, okay, is there something to do with the fact that you can do, like there's that saying, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity? So yeah. Is that kind of what breeding and football have in common that would make this passionate for both? What I thought was interesting, Daniel Parker's like, well, when you have two people that are at the peak, that are at peaks, and that are very intelligent and very passionate, and you put them together, that passion is going to rise between them.
That's true. Yes.
That's true too. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
So I may be off, but yet I may not be. I'm kind of like, but what Daniel Parker said made sense.
What did you say about the breeding and the football?
That you can do the same thing over and over again, and basically get different results.
Yeah, because like there's rules to breeding, you know, and there's rules to football. But you can watch 1,000 football games that all follow the same rules, and every single one's a different football game. And so there are rules to it, but then it's not always the same thing. Breeding's not simple, but there are rules to breeding about egg temperatures, and I don't breed ball pythons, but I know that there's times of the year when they ovulate, and then you pair them up, and you do this and you do that, and X number of days you can look at the egg and you do this and that. But
and you prepare all year, just like a football player.
What? Yeah, that's the same no matter what. But every single one is different. That's why, you know, I'm a huge fan of Call of Duty. I play Call of Duty all the time. It's one of my favorite games. And the game is the same. The whole principle of the game is the same, but you can play 100 matches and every single one is different. Because you don't know what the other team's going to do. You don't know what your teammates are going to do. You don't know. Like, there's some, you know, you could play the same map 100 times and every round is different. But that kind of stuff, I think, is stimulating for us.
Yeah.
The knowing the rules and then knowing that every single time it's different could be what's stimulating, and that's what draws people in. That could be what draws people into breeding, what draws people into football, what draws people into...
So that's a very interesting point, because I thought about that too. So ex-football players, if anyone's watching this, you might actually go, okay, so an ex-football player might actually make a good breeder.
In the sense of
passion.
Chad Brown. He was an ex-football player, and he's a breeder, and now he's Ship Your Reptiles. There's an interesting psychology to that And I've talked about it with like Magic the Gathering. I used to play that card game, Magic the Gathering, all the time, where the rules are the same, and every round is the same in the sense of the rules and the structure, but every round is completely different based on the game itself. So there could be something to be said on. I think there's an element to that kind of stuff too. Is if you're good at something, it motivates it too. You know, if I sucked at Call of Duty, I wouldn't want to play it all the time. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I don't suck.
Saying I suck because I don't play it?
Yeah, no.
Yes. I mean, it's fine because I do.
That's first. But you know, breeding can have its challenges too. But it's an interesting comparison. But what you're looking at, what you're drawing on, is the fact that it could be routine and it could be the same in the structure, but different every single time in the experience itself.
See, this is why I need you. This is why I need, because I'm like, okay, so this is my answer, and I'm sure people are going, yeah, I don't get it. But then you're like, okay, so da, 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 and then they're like, oh yeah, no, it makes sense more probably to people now. Instead of just being from this crazy guy that's people. I told Daniel Parker, it's like, no, I'm a hillbilly scientist. You got to remember that.
A hillbilly scientist.
So my words may not be the greatest, but by God, my brain works.
If I know what you're trying to say, that's the purpose of language.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I came to the conclusion that most people's empathy isn't that far off of normal people. Like, it's really not that bad. It's really not that exceptional. There was only like 3 people that I thought, like, I went, oh wow, okay. One was the lady with you, Keely. Yeah, she actually had I felt that way. And then there was a kid, well, I say kid, he was like 22 or something, so his frontal lobe wasn't fully developed. He seemed like he had more empathy, and that may be because he didn't have the brake system that we have. And then there's another guy that I don't want to talk about because he ended up being a bigot, which is an actual interesting point, that he had more empathy and he's still a bigot.
Well, then that would make me want to question. I'm not saying you're wrong, but then I would want to look at what measurements were you using to gauge and measure empathy, and is it subjectivity? Is it your impression of it? Or how were you measuring empathy in everybody?
So what I have learned from this study is to actually look at empathy by how people edit other people.
Okay.
Literally, if you find that a person tries to edit another person through their own experience, then they're capable of empathy.
What do you mean by edit?
Anything.
Okay.
Any type of editing. Like, okay, so, wow, okay, that's interesting because I went through this and this. Any type of that, like anything that you might go, okay, so this person. And what's interesting is that somebody like me or Mahomes, I believe Mahomes has this. My childhood is, because what you do, I wonder if the kids that you work with what you're doing to them is making them more like me. And I don't know if that's a good or, like, I'm at this point where it's like, for a normal person, why isn't there more empathy why isn't the human brain more empathetic a default setting?
You opened 8 cans of worms in that sentence. And I don't know where you want to go back and start. Okay. I'm from a psychology perspective, I'm going to argue that humans are born, and from the second we are born and the moment we're born, our brains are wired for empathy, in the sense that we're wired to be responsive to the emotions of other people. And the evidence of that is in the mirror neurons that our brains have when we are born. And that's when you have a baby who's 4 or 5 months old and you smile and the baby smiles back at you. And you frown and the baby frowns back at you. Yes. That facial recognition of each other is I would say the beginnings of empathy, and those are neurons that are in the brain from the moment we're born.
Yes. So I work on this from a neurological standpoint, listening to PhDs and stuff on neuroscience, showing me what you're talking about is this spot right here that they showed on the right side of the brain. It's actually on the inner side of the brain. It's not on the outside. But animals actually have a form of empathy that is modeling. If they catch people running in the woods, they're probably going to run because they're also afraid now. It's a survival method. Now, they don't have that empathy that we create, and I believe that next level of empathy starts to go through the imagination. So as a child, for me, I grew up out in the sticks. I grew up a town away from where I went to school. I had nobody that was my age that lived next to me even a mile from me till I was in junior high. My brother was learning disabled, and I was labeled learning disabled. So I was always on the outside of society, but I was never kept from society, but I kind of was. So I kind of grew up an only child. But yet I had a 5-year-old brother that was learning disabled. I actually learned so fast that it seems that I'm slow because I forget. That's a healthy brain forgets. So if I'm learning it like that, oh, that's simple. Oh, look over there. That's how my brain works. I wonder if I have ADHD with some autism and other spectrum stuff, but it does. Like, so me growing up that way, they have found that, like Einstein, I believe, like Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. There's a few other people like Ridley Scott. You hear about them talking about seeing it in their heads. Seeing it. So these guys have more, not neurons, but they have a bigger brain due to myelin. So that connection goes faster between those neurons because of the myelin. So they are connected faster. So even if your brain was to go through the pathway on the outside, it's actually faster to go through the middle for me. So I see it because it connects to my cerebral cortex, it connects to my imagination, it connects to my empathy, and it connects to my frontal lobe. So I have a massive brake system. If you yawn, I most likely will not yawn unless I'm tired or sick. But I can empathize with everybody without, like, I don't have to live through something to experience it. I have actually, the one thing that I usually don't talk about, it's one subject in physics I stay out of, is cosmology. Because I was at work and I was listening to Mitch McCaughey's Multi-Worlds Theory book. And he was talking about the multiple worlds, cosmology. Cosmology is the study of the universe. So it's studying the beginning and the end of the universe. I saw it and I felt it.
You saw and you felt the beginning and the end of the universe? How do you know that that was your accurate perception?
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter if it's just a thought that you're keeping to yourself, and I've experienced this. It matters a little bit more if you're trying to find a more objective truth that you want to define to other people, and you're going to say, well, you're wrong for believing this because I felt the beginning and the end of the universe, and
I don't even,
and I'm right.
But it's very interesting to me because I actually fell to my knees and freaking heavy breathing, like I was having an anxiety attack. I cut it off. My brain, since I have the ADHD and it's, oh, look at them there, I got out of it. But I saw the potential that anybody that ever got stuck there, I could totally understand why they would want to commit suicide. Like, I know, right? I apologize for the heavy nature of this, but it's very interesting because I've never had a suicidal thought in my life.
Yeah, I think I'm having a hard time following the trajectory of your thoughts that you just took from earlier on. But I want to take a couple steps back, Daniel.
Go ahead.
the definition of empathy is just the ability to understand someone else's feelings. So empathy is if you had a bad day at work and something bad happened, you lost somebody you loved and you were sad. Empathy is just me understanding your sadness and knowing that you're sad and knowing that I would be sad if I experienced the same day as you. Like that's empathy.
That sounds more like sympathy to me. And this is where it's important to have this talk, on the definition of things. Because to me, it's if I cry for you is sympathy, I cry with you is empathy.
It's hard. It's there's not much difference between empathy and sympathy, but empathy is maybe just is a deeper understanding. Yeah. So if you called me and said that I lost someone I loved that was close to me, and my response was, "Oh, I'm really sorry," and it was just a more superficial like pity, that would be more of sympathy, where empathy is a deeper understanding and a deeper processing of those feelings. So is there a song that makes you cry when you listen to it? Or is there a TV show? Ted Lasso season 3 ended last night.
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it. I have almost no channels because I'm saving money to move.
I was a stupid mess. It's a beautiful show.
Oh, I cry at almost every season.
That's empathy. It's that deeper feeling. Lucia? There we go. I think I froze for a second. And so I'm curious into your definition of empathy and how you're treating the idea of empathy and how you're relating that to whatever experience you had where you saw the beginning and end of the universe, and how are you sure that wasn't just
but that's why I talk about this and I say, okay, so I don't think that you have my type of empathy. I was pretty sure of that.
But I don't think there's different types of empathy.
To me there is. Well, but that's kind of like a step ladder almost, like so a psychopath has no empathy. And this is very curious. I'm very interested to know if you've ever actually dealt with a psychopath. I believe I actually have met one psychopath in real life.
I'm going to phrase it a little gently because of my position as a therapist.
Yeah. Do you don't have names?
I have met some individuals who, because of their childhood experiences and because of their childhood trauma, and how the world had responded to their behaviors following their childhood trauma, that they did not give a shit about people. They did not care who they hurt. They did not have any feelings or remorse towards other people, and became dangerous later in life. I've never stopped trying to help anybody. I've never stopped trying to work with anybody, and I would never tell I can't help you anymore because you're beyond that.
That's interesting.
Empathy in the mental health profession, with the staff that I supervise and with the training I have, empathy is one of the hardest. It's weird because I just 10 minutes ago said that we're all born with the tools for empathy, but at the same time, it's the hardest thing to teach.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to teach people because we have this notion where, like, I don't know, this is maybe a bad example, Daniel, but like if you have a kid and your kid pushed someone at school and then they come home and then you push the kid and go, see, how did that feel? That didn't feel good, did it? And then I think people think, oh, I'm going to teach my kid empathy because he pushed someone at school. I'm going to push him. But you're not teaching empathy by pushing push someone later.
This is a point to what happened in my childhood. See, the being alone part helped out with my imagination. And studies have showed that single children often have more imagination. But it's not in anger that you find empathy. Anger often leads to less empathy. It's when you learn to control your anger is when I have a very bad temper. I actually have very bad anger issues, but I control them so well. This is the part, I don't know if I should publish this part or not. This is the part that Daniel's like, yeah, because I want to be honest with the audience. I've never thought about shooting up a school or anything, but I have thought about killing people. That is actually something I have thought, but I control it.
Am I your therapist today?
I know, right? Like I tell, like I only have you on so that I get free therapy. Like it's the only reason.
I will say this. I will say this to that. Like as human beings, we just have random thoughts can pop in our mind at any time. And and
people shouldn't be punished for the random thoughts. They should be rewarded or punished or whatnot based on how they react to them.
Correct. You don't want to punish someone for having negative thoughts. But how intrusive do those thoughts become to where you have to worry about somebody doing something? So me driving and being stuck in traffic and then getting cut off by some idiot, and then I'm like, oh, then I pretend like I rammed the...
You did freeze. Yeah, you froze.
It's been weird. I hope it's not me, man. My internet connection.
It might be me, so it might be a...
Okay.
Because this place is...
humans are an amalgamation of good thoughts and bad thoughts, and random shit can pop in our minds at any time, and we're not judged by our thoughts necessarily, but how dangerous and intrusive those thoughts can be, and the propensity for someone to act on them is where we need to be careful.
Yeah, and so the two thoughts I have: one, is this something we could base trauma on? So when we talk about how you might go about dealing with trauma, the people that have more negative thoughts that lean towards violence, and then people that have more thoughts that lean towards self-harm, if that's a way that you might look at separating different types of people and different strategies. And then two, what you do. I actually wonder, because a person can become a psychopath through brain damage. So I'm wondering if there is a way to help that and create those neurological bonds that move it from psychopathy to something else, to something more like me. Because I do think most of those kids that you talk about are going to move more towards me when you actually take that time to go, hey, you guys should have like the training that you try to do to get them to be more empathetic and stuff. Is that going to lead them to be more like me, where they have that imagination and that empathy combined and that neurological pathway that's more thicker to where it makes it faster? And so they actually are more empathetic naturally.
You ask very loaded and very well thought out, multi-layered questions. So I'm going to try my best to do that. When I'm meeting children and adults for the first time, and they are reporting to me, I have suicide. Go ahead.
Oh, you just started to freeze there for a second. But sometimes when it freezes, the other side doesn't actually freeze in the video. It's weird. It freezes on my screen, but not actually when I go to edit.
When I'm meeting a client for the first time and we're talking about symptoms, and yes, a client who is expressing more suicidal ideation and a client who is expressing more urges to hurt themselves, or pervasive thoughts, intrusive thoughts we call them, where they're negative thoughts that you can't ignore. And they're not just a bad thought in passing that goes away and you're like, what am I thinking? This is crazy. They're intrusive thoughts that don't go away, or they get worse the more time you give energy to. That typically leads me to want to look at a diagnosis of some type of a trauma or an attachment related situation. And then so yes, those are some not precursors to trauma, but someone who experiences suicidal ideation, someone who experiences self-harm urges or intrusive thoughts, negative patterns of thoughts, you could likely go back to some type of an attachment or trauma diagnosis, because, even though as babies we're hardwired to be empathetic to a degree and our mirror neurons are there, so much is learned. Anger is an emotion that we have, but the behaviors of that emotion and how we express that anger is learned. hatred and anger and bigotry and all that stuff is learned. We're not born predisposed to that. And so childhood experiences get shaped by that. But there's so much more. Our own resilience to changes and our flexibility in our lives can be wired in us. I know, you know, some children are just born with more flexibility and they're more easygoing and they're less emotional. And then how adults and parents respond to their children will reinforce or extinguish those patterns of behaviors. And so it's in the whole conversation of like nature versus nurture, it's not one or the other, it's both. Like we're born genetically, whatever your parents handed down from you that was handed down from their parents and all of that genetic makeup and the resilience and the temperaments and the mirror neurons and all that stuff we have, we're born with. And then our experiences and our interactions with the adults in our lives and how they reciprocate that will then shape us and lead us to becoming angry or becoming healthy adults. But I want to highlight this really quick too. Just because someone experienced a traumatic event does not mean they have a trauma disorder. Diagnosing someone with trauma doesn't mean that they experienced something bad. It's not about what happened, but it's about how that affects the person. And so the trauma diagnosis is not that something shitty happened. It's that this thing happened and now I am having these symptoms that are exacerbated because of my experiences. But you also said about wiring in the brain, and our neurons as we grow up get wired, and it's kind of like if
past the age of 30. Like,
well, yeah, but yes, our brains are a lot less elastic when we're older, and it's a lot harder for us to change when we're older. But when we're younger, our brains are a lot more flexible and amiable to changes. But imagine like if you had your front yard and it's all grass, and every morning you walked out the same path of grass from your front porch to the street, eventually that grass is going to wear down and you're going to have a nice little trail there, right? So repeated negative experiences, repeated traumas, repeated interactions, that's how the brain works. The other neurons die as other neurons get hardwired and create these neural paths in our brains. But you can always rewire the brain. So someone who's experienced trauma and is away from that traumatic event and is either working through therapy or has medications or has supportive individuals and healthy individuals in their lives, that trauma brain can be rewired where you're not going to maybe get cured from your trauma, but you can heal and it can have a less of an impact on you.
Okay, so
I hope I answered every question.
For the audience at home, the reason why this is important to understand, something I talked with Daniel Parker, Beretta, the chairman of FWC in Florida, is not a psychopath. He is capable of empathy. And I talked to him like this. It's like, okay, so with him, his issue, whatever it is, there is a way to rewrite his brain through manipulation, but it has to be positive. It has to be something like that. And so there is things to this. So understanding this, plus me and Bill both, we've talked about this before, having more empathy like I do, or somebody we believe like Mike Stefani has a little bit more empathy, and we think that actually helps with his enclosures, the way he builds them. And I think this helps with me understanding the body language of my animals. But the actual study has taught us that empathy's great, knowledge is better, who you spend time with is even more important. It was something that a guy said on a podcast from Midas Touch. Who politicians spend time with is who becomes their constituents. So literally, he was a politician here in Missouri. I heard him say Jefferson City, and he talked about bills on the floor of the freaking State House. They didn't even call him what the bill was called. It wasn't even about the subject. It was who lobbyists. So it's John versus Jim. Because the lobbyists are spending as much time as they can with the politicians to become their constituents. So therefore, who we spend time with, Beretta probably spends time with rich assholes that think they are self-made, that they are smarter than the average person, that they don't really need help. And then there's, just so much to that, I think. And so somebody said something about there was no such thing as a good-looking male billionaire. And the guy come on there and goes, okay, so that actually makes sense, because the people that are spending time with these billionaires are not actually correcting their behavior because they still want to be part of that money trail. So they aren't. So once you hit that level in society with money, nobody's willing to fight against you, willing to talk to you, willing to treat you like they should, as if, okay, no, maybe that's a problem. So it's like conservation. Most people don't actually, even if they keep animals, they don't care about conservation unless it's in their backyard. The NIMBY, not in my backyard, is a perfect example. You have to keep that in their minds. You have to push that. And if you stay away from them, then they don't have that push. It's actually something I find interesting in bigots. It's like, no, you collect more bigots around you, and then you're like, no, I see these people all the time that I'm a bigot towards, because you're spending time with people that are looking for them. And so even if you're talking about like Meta, like Facebook and stuff, they're going to direct you to people that are saying bad things about that group. So you're going to see it more often, and then you're going to notice it more often. A buddy of mine at work, he's like 22. I talked to him about this, and he goes, oh, yeah, this is Pride Month. Yeah, I forgot. I don't ever see any of that stuff, because he doesn't care. It's not important to him. He doesn't hate it. He doesn't love it. He doesn't hate it. He's indifferent to it. So therefore, he doesn't see it. So literally, their bigotry is literally making them see it, because of who they're spending time with. It's really fascinating. So if you want to spend time with more, so this is why us pushing that idea that these animals have thoughts, have desires, they may be more basic, is actually still a good thing. It starts trickling trickling because of my wording.
So are you trying to say that I know you brought it back to FWC and the guys that killed those snakes.
Those guys had empathy. Those guys in themselves might have actually experienced trauma. Now, most people are automatically going to jump on me and go, no, Mr. Coffee experienced trauma. No, both can be correct. Now, it's how their brains took it.
I'm not arguing that.
It's really fascinating.
The gentleman who owned the snake, and the gentleman, Mr. Coffee, was there. Definitely could have.
That was trauma.
Could have a trauma reaction to what happened. The FWC officers could also be experiencing the trauma. It depends on how they are processing and experiencing that. Just because they were there and it happened doesn't mean they're going to be affected by it. And the profound backlash that they are all receiving on social media can definitely. And it was said, going back to that FWC thing specifically, it was such a shitty situation, and it was so profoundly preventable in so many different stages. I
talked to Daniel Parker about this, and it seemed like it was a lack of leadership in every single aspect of that caused that.
Well, humans, we're fallible creatures, and we err and make mistakes all the time. And when you're in those kind of bureaucratic government positions where there's 9 different levels of authority above you, and communication is shit, and it's the telephone game at work, and you don't know what's going on, and I don't know. I don't want to speak too much on the FWC situation specifically. I feel bad for the owners of those snakes down there. I feel bad for Florida, who is now the reptile keepers in Florida, who have just had such a fight like support USARK, you guys, but support USARK Florida as well. Yeah. Because a lot of these other states are going to see what's happening in Florida and try to piggyback on that.
And Daniel actually cares about conservation. This was important.
There's going back to trauma. There's a word and empathy. There's a word I want you to start thinking about too. There's a word that we use in mental health and psychology called attunement, and being attuned to other people. And it's kind of similar to empathy, where empathy is understanding other people's feelings. Attunement is more of being present and understanding other people's thoughts. But also, like, we use the word attunement a lot to describe when parents are attentive and aware of their babies. And so a mom who hears the baby cry and then, oh, my baby's crying, let me make sure that she's not hungry, let me change her diaper, let me see if there's any discomfort, let me nurture her and rock her and help soothe her so she feels better. That's attunement. And we use empathy. You're using empathy a lot with reptile keeping, but attunement is a very effective word. You know, reptile keepers are more attuned to their animals and their animals' needs. And I
hate mass media so much. Mass media has caused us so much BS. Like,
wait, what do you mean?
Like the thought of psychopath. Being a psychopath. Oh, well, that means you're serious. No, it just means you lack empathy. Most psycho, I don't know. Yeah, it's
more than that. Someone who lacks empathy isn't automatically a psychopath. It's more than that.
That's how I took it. That's how my knowledge of it is literally the lack of empathy. Now that leads to other things.
People can lack empathy but also not act on it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you'll be a serial killer.
If a serial killer has killed 0 people, is he still a serial killer?
Yeah, exactly. But it's that mess. So it's like we're making new names over and over again because the media has taken these things and just ripped them apart.
Wait, I don't know what you're referring to now. I don't know
what you're talking about. Saying empathy over what you were saying.
And I wasn't attunement, and I wasn't saying that you're wrong, but I was saying like. Yeah. A parent, a mother, and a father who are aware of their child's emotions and aware of their needs, and my child needs me right now. The baby cries, and the parent, oh, I'm sorry. It's not necessarily empathy, but I'm going to change your diaper. I'm going to feed you. Let's see why you're crying, and let's help you soothe. Let's relax you. That's empathy to a degree, but that's attunement. And I think a better reptile keeper is someone who's more attuned to their animals. And it's weird, like we
just today, this pitch, like all my girls have eggs, and I think all my girls have eggs, and Pitch has been wanting to lay for a while, and I have a giant lay box in there, and so the other day I went in there and I started scratching at it myself to show her. Today she finally digged. So it's like, so understanding that, so having that
attunement
is an empathy or whatever you want to call it, is what I do. So even if you hate my enclosure, understand that I do recognize my animals. I think about this. They actually could try to communicate back to me because I try to communicate the way. I had a goose the other day at the park. Do this, and so I did this, and so I did this, and I did this, and we just went back and forth for over 5 minutes. And it's like I have no idea what the hell we were talking about. I don't think the goose did either, but it's interesting because it probably did want to communicate.
Yeah, who knows? I don't think we'll ever know because we can't interview the goose.
We don't know for sure, but I think it's. I try to explain reptiles. If we stop looking at them as mindless and start looking at them as a relationship, and communication is always key in relationships.
So here's my thought on that, because I kind of maybe also like lean on the fence a little bit, and I kind of teeter one.
I know you do.
Because I don't want to overly anthropomorphize our animals, and I don't want to get, like someone who says like, oh, my lizard's mad at me because I didn't clean the water. Well, no, your lizard's probably not mad at you because you didn't clean the water. but your lizard would benefit from clean water.
Yeah.
And so when there's poop in the water, changing it, that's good. But your animal's not going to be angry at you if you didn't change the water. But also, and kind of maybe this is something I've even thought about myself, is look at the human brain and what the different functions of the different parts of the brain do. Human brains have amygdalas, and amygdalas process emotions, and human brains have hippocampus, and human brains have, I don't have my book, so I don't exactly remember all the shit, but we have our cerebral cortex, and our frontal lobe is for thinking and processing cause and effect, and we have our emotion brains that process different emotions, and that's because of the neurochemicals that are in that part of the brain. So if, for example, the amygdala is the part of our brain that processes emotions, sadness, anger, whatever. If a lizard brain has an amygdala, then we could conclude that the amygdala in the lizard brain functions in the same manner that the amygdala does in the human brain. Maybe. I'm not 100%, but I would assume that it's something like that.
It's oftentimes people make it sound like the neurons are the most important thing. Not really, because if you can prove that neurons are different between different species, you'd win a Nobel Prize instantly. Our neurons are probably not that different. It's the mapping of the brain that's so different. The bearded dragon cerebral cortex is on the bottom of their brain. It's like our brain, but twisted. And so that's why I talked about with changing the colors of an anole. If it has a fart, it might actually change colors depending on what part of the brain that activates, if it's close to the part of the brain that controls their coloring. It's about what parts of the brain are close to the coloring. Whatever happens, it's circuitry.
You have a really interesting and unique way that you perceive stuff. It's really cool.
It's like I see it in my head. Does it seem that way?
Yeah.
Because literally, as I'm talking about it, I'm seeing it.
But you also said fart. Do reptiles fart? I've heard my tegu fart.
Yes, I was about to say that one of those nights, calm fancy, I told you the last time, he head bobs me when he wants out to go poop. And it's like, you seem shocked that he would try to communicate with me that night like that. It was really cool. And so I took him in the bathroom one night when I noticed that he did that and he didn't poop. I saw his tummy rumbled and he just went from to... And you can just see the relaxed look on his face, just thank you. And it's just running water under it. I'm like, all right, buddy, I got your back.
I do, yes. Reptiles are more than just fight or flight. I mean, they have a brainstem, so they are fight or flight. They have that. We have that. Anything that has a brainstem has fight or flight. And there is so much research to say that lizards have higher cognition and they have higher functioning than we've given them credit for previously. We have to be careful how much we put on our reptiles for having deeper emotions and stuff.
And that's why I always talk about it as...
I'm not saying it's not there, but we need to study it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so they don't love you, but they do bond with you. It's like
to a degree they do, yeah.
Yeah, it's very
simple. Even if it's as simple as this shape gives me food.
Yes,
and I get fed from this food monkey, as Mike Stefani calls it.
They have desires, but they're very simple. But
yeah, so then I would when you're talking about empathy with reptiles. I don't know if you have a male tegu and a female tegu and you have them in the same 8-foot enclosure together and the female tegu dies, is the male tegu sad?
Sometimes I've heard of that happening.
But how could we ever know that? How could we ever tell?
I don't know. That's the interesting point. You're just taking off somebody's word.
I watched the Dave Kaufman video last week with the garter snakes, and the female garter snake was dead, and there were still 12 male garter snakes trying to bang it. They didn't.
Okay, so my Peter banded skinks are a social species.
There are more social reptiles. That is true. Yes.
And I believe my female, it was actually the one I got when you were in town. Yeah. She's actually, I believe she's gravid. and I believe I know the father because a few months ago he bit her tail in front of me. I don't think she was a full adult, so I tried to keep him away, but I think she's gravid now because you can see her spine, but yet she's still fat. So I think it's gravid. And like actually positive, I would be like one of the less than 20 people that's actually bred them in captivity, weirdly. But what I'm noticing about my males, they are not eating right now.
Okay.
She is.
Okay.
I'm wondering if they stopped eating because she's gravid.
Why would they stop eating because she's gravid?
Because I only feed them when they come out to see me.
Okay.
So usually my males are usually super aggressive towards food, not towards each other, but they're like, oh, food, yeah, nothing now.
I would also want to look at other reasons why they're not eating. As there, changes in temperature, changes in humidity. Are they fed a lot, not hungry? Are they? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, but who knows?
And that's the thing is I always preface most of my thoughts with I question this. Yeah. Not that this is exact. But most people in the world want an exact answer. And it's like, no, you're dealing with the world. So therefore you cannot have an exact answer.
We have this crazy phenomenon with humans where we are always so convinced by our own perceptions of things, but our perceptions of things is the most inaccurate form of evidence. And so, one of the examples I like to give is if you were like a 6-year-old kid and you were in the forest one night taking a walk and you saw like a white light, fog, something or whatever, and then your brain is like, I just saw a ghost. That's a ghost. I saw a ghost. And you're convinced you saw a ghost because you saw it with your own eyes. But our own eyes can trick us and our brains can trick us. And we always, as humans, hold on so strongly to our personal observations of things, but it's the most inaccurate form of science, And so it's a really unique phenomenon that we have with people. And that person who saw a ghost when they were 6 is going to grow up. And I'm not saying there's no ghosts, but I'm saying that you might need more evidence to support that than just I saw it when I was 6.
And this is why having a bunch of people actually communicate this stuff, talk to each other. But Facebook makes that so hard. I actually haven't posted to the Peter Bandit group because they treated me like shit. And they can go screw themselves because of how well they've treated me. Calling me sexist because I wanted to question their method. Not because I was angry with them. I'm like, I want to understand this better. No, you're a sexist. You think I'm wrong because I'm a woman. It's like, what? No, she's right because you're sexist. It's like, what? So I'm like, I don't want to post. I'm like one of the top few people that you should be asking about Peter Bandit skinks. I can sex them by sight. And that's one of those things that they're like, no, we don't agree with you on that. We don't think that's right. Well, come talk to me. But no, you're a sexist. What?
That's part of the issue I have with the Facebook groups is because if you wanted to write a book on a species, you would need to have some type of pedigree, some type of a curriculum vitae that would support the experience you have with the work that you're doing. But I could go to the pet shop and buy a pet and have it for 6 months and then create a Facebook group that says all of the ways I'm doing this are right, and if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. And your crested geckos should have 3 different colored pool noodles that are exactly 8 inches off the ground, and paper towel is bad but good. And that's why when you started this conversation with good Facebook groups, and there are a lot of really good ones too, and it really goes down to how they're adminned and how they're facilitated. I just brought you back full circle, man.
I know. Hey, high five.
You and I talked. I don't know if you wanted to bring it up, but you and I were talking in text message too about part of our conversation tonight being about trauma bonding.
I was actually about to bring that up.
And I know mental health people in the profession that use the word trauma bonding wrong also. Trauma bonding is really strange and it's hard to describe, but mostly what it's about is if you had childhood trauma when you were younger, and then you become an adult and you get into an intimate relationship with a partner who treats you the way your parent treated you and are abusive to you, but you see that as love, you see that as affection, and you are now attached to this person who's abusing you, that's kind of what trauma bonding means. Sometimes I've seen people use trauma bonding to say that we've bonded over a trauma. So
yeah, which does sounds correct to normal human being.
It sounds like a correct term because like the country trauma bonded over 9/11. You know, we unanimously, but that's not trauma bonding, that's bonding. If you and I were taking a hike and we fell down a cliff and we were trapped for 12 hours and then we were saved, we bonded over a traumatic, similar experience.
But the killing of the snakes in Florida bonded us a lot as animal keepers, not just reptile keepers.
No, I agree with you. But that's not trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is very specifically to if you like, oh no, my partner loves me and this is how he shows me he loves me, and it has to do with your childhood trauma and maintaining those negative patterns of relationships with adults.
Of which is interesting because I asked somebody on Facebook, I think this is where this came from, because I asked them, like, okay, what do you want to know about trauma with reptiles? And they said, well, do animals trauma bond with us? And it's like, when you think back, he was a friend of mine at work. He said the reason why he doesn't like pet keeping is because his neighbor at one point in time abused her dog by leaving it in the house, never letting it out, never letting it pee, and then she would whip it when it came home and be mad at it because it pissed on the carpet and
that
stuff.
Dog peed, it just didn't pee outside.
Yeah, and it's like she was abusive.
Yeah.
Since we do understand that dogs do bond, reptiles can bond, can that trauma of that animal lead to them bonding in that way with humans? I think with horses, maybe. It's an interesting thought. I can't tell you it's right or wrong, but I think this is where we need to go with that, is this needs to be the reason why we push for the idea that these animals have thoughts and desires. If we push that, then we absolutely will move everything away from anything even remotely to do with trauma bonding.
So the evidence that a human would trauma bond to another human in like a romantic relationship would be that sorry, but in my example, it's going to be a boyfriend and a girlfriend. And the boyfriend is the abuser. It's not always that way. There are female abusers. There are
the lady. Oh my God,
abuser. My example tonight is going to be a male and a female. Go ahead. You wanted to jump in really quick?
Yeah, the people that I have downstairs are domestic violence, and they are not like, he gets in trouble with the police, but I've heard her in the morning start screaming and crying about how she cheats on him and all this stuff. And it's like, no, they are both abusers and they're both victims of abuse.
That might be different. I would say someone was trauma bonded if they had an abusive dad and then they moved into a relationship with an adult partner who was abusive in the same way, and they didn't see it as abuse. They saw it as love. No, he loves me. He's doing it because he loves me. That's more of a trauma bond. The only argument about animals trauma bonding would be that if you mistreat a dog or a cat, they attack you. They become aggressive. They become scared. And so that would, someone who's trauma bonded would see the behaviors as love and not see it as dangerous, where a dog is going to bite you and protect itself. So that would rule out the idea of a trauma bond.
But yeah, most of the time it should be, but not all the time. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I can't say either way.
Very interesting thought. But yeah. I think people, there are instances where people have had adverse experiences with adults and adverse experience with other humans, and they're way more comfortable in a relationship where they have animals as their friends and they don't have friends. They're too scared, or they're too nervous about having socialization with other humans because of past abuse. And I would rather go home and be by myself and have my reptiles who are unconditional, who I can take care of, who aren't going to abuse me or hurt me or talk back to me. And so I wouldn't even say that would be a healthy or an unhealthy bond. I mean, I think someone who has less human friends and more animal friends, great, good for you, that's fine. If you're not happy and you want to change it, then go try and figure out a way to change it. But if you're content in your life that way, then that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. But and I have a video about using body language to make other people comfortable so that you can actually communicate with them.
That's absolutely 100% true in mental health. Yeah. And that's part of treatment, you know, and me as a therapist working with children who have been traumatized, there's a lot of therapeutic progress in just simply my approach and my voice tone and my body language and my facial expressions. And if I'm talking to them and we're talking about and the things they've experienced, and it's been really bad what they've experienced, and none of those things have been their fault. And there's a lot to be communicated. I can say a lot by not saying anything at all, with just the way I'm talking and my voice tone and my face. I'm doing it to you right now. See, Daniel, it's okay, man.
The defense, like, I'm comfortable with you. Yeah, we're good. But something you were talking with Roy, doing experiments with reptiles with kids and stuff, and you were talking about the kids showing more interest in the animals, so spending more of their mental focus on the animals. And I thought it was interesting. There's studies, and I know you know these studies, that because this is a family thing. So where kids is like 2-year-olds, they had somebody go in with a toy, and they were like, oh, no, don't touch this. This is bad. Don't do this. And then they walk out, and then the kid will play with it. But then they walk in with somebody like, oh, my God, I can't wait till you play with this. I can't wait till you play with this. Oh, my God. And then the kid will go, just automatically touch it and start playing with it. Could your positive body language lead kids to want to do that more, to actually want to spend more time with those reptiles?
Yeah. I think sure.
Pretty interesting.
Why not? I think so.
This goes back to who you spend time with is more important than your empathy.
Well, right, but so with the reptiles, it's a little different because the child, if they have a fear of reptiles, also I have to help them be more comfortable with me as an adult. I have to be more comfortable. They have to learn how to be comfortable with me as a male. If a child's had a male abuser and I'm a male provider.
Yeah.
Then they have to learn how to be comfortable and feel safe with me, and that's just through repeated positive time with me. And then if a child's afraid of a snake, that's another hurdle to get over. But I think and just looking as a reptile educator, if I go to a reptile show and I have kindergartners in my class, how I present that animal and how that animal presents itself could reinforce the kids' positive views on that animal. That's why I do reptile education.
Yeah.
And a kid that's afraid and then learn that they're not scary and comes away with a positive experience.
Like you, I know how to do psychological studies. I've done some in college. I did a nonverbal study in human communication using a role-play game. So I'm actually certified to do human trials in a college setting. So whenever you want to do your studies and stuff on kids and reptiles, clue me in. I'm so interested in this. I would love to set that up, and having more minds to solve the problems like that, to go, okay, so this is what somebody might say later. Let's try to fix this before it happens. It's always great to talk to somebody before you do a study. I'm not finding enough of that in this community. When I actually have things that I want to talk about that I think might be sketchy, might be maybe over the top, and then I'm like, I would love to have somebody else's opinion, and then just nobody. There's just like nobody around to talk to about it. And it's like, it's really disappointing because I want to fix shit. I'm not here just to make money. I don't even make money off of this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do every one of this bit for free. State herpetologist I interview because I want people to understand the laws. I want them to see their state herpetologist as a human that they can go conversate with. I want to humanize bureaucracy so people aren't so scared to go and talk to them, so that we as a community can fight back in a positive manner by actually communicating with these people. And
I like that.
And every single one of those people that I communicated with, herpetologists, wants people to join the arguments, to talk. They want that.
If we take this conversation back to FWC and USARK Florida, I think an ideal circumstance would be, and not just in Florida, but every single state, where the policy writers and the lawmakers work with reptile people to write reptile laws.
They can. They just have to talk to them.
Exactly. And we have to recognize that politicians and
most conservation
officers,
most conservation efforts in most states are not funded correctly.
No, they're not. And I think one thing that you said, too, that I want to reiterate is, like, police officers and conservationists and those FWC guys and all the politicians, they're all people.
And most of them have normal empathy. They're
shaped by their experiences in life and shaped by this. And this is a whole nother, maybe a different podcast, but we talk about empathy and attunement and all this kind of stuff, but fear plays just a completely separate but equally influential role in all of that. Someone could be very empathetic but be afraid of snakes. And their attitudes change because of their fear of snakes, separate from their empathy and everything.
Let's go into some trauma so people here understand that we are not trying to traumatize you in any way, shape, or form. We are trying, so this is a trigger alert, but what we're trying to do is to get you to get to a step that you might actually find more healing and more acceptance of your fear, or something that improves your life instead of just being afraid. We're trying to take a step forward. So things like what you were just talking about. I've actually met people that are actually on Facebook. I've seen people that are terrified of their bearded dragons because their bearded dragons were terrified of them and tried to bite them. And I mean, most people are going to go, no, it's a bearded dragon. And then I've got friends that got bit by a retic, and he goes, dude, I took pictures of it. I felt like it was a rite of passage. But yet he had a buddy that got bit by a python, just a regular python, and he's like, oh, he was so scared of it that he actually couldn't feed it for like 2 months, and he had to give it back to the guy. So it's not the size. It's not actually, like we just said about the FWC people versus Mr. Coffee and their trauma. It's how the brain takes it, not actually what the event was.
Right. Right.
So can you speak, and maybe we could go down that path of the more type of people that would be more apt to think of self-harm, or people that would think of harming others, and how each of, from either side of that, you might actually start to try to fix that trauma for those different types of people. But it's interesting also that reptile people, I believe, are more types of people that need or want more approval through earning it. Something I talked about before with like my grandparents, my grandmother being like a dog where she's a saint and just loves you no matter what, and the reptiles are like my grandfather. You earn that love. If he said he loved you, you had earned it, and it seems so much more important because you felt like you earned it.
Okay. What did you want me to touch on? You said a couple different things.
Yeah, either side of that. Maybe. I'm going to be really
careful with commenting on self-harm and suicidal ideation and stuff. And I'm going to say right now that if anyone is ever struggling with suicidal ideation or self-harm thoughts, there are so many directions to go. There are so many people to talk to help you through that. No one is experiencing that by themselves, but
is 988 or 99? Is it 988 or 998? Is it in every state?
Yes, I don't know if it's in every state. I know
it's in Missouri. It's in Missouri.
It's 988. It's implemented in, I think it's in Wisconsin for sure. I don't know what states have it and what states don't. I believe that they're working on it. If it's not nationwide, then it's getting there. So anyone experiencing intrusive thoughts or suicidal ideation or self-harm thoughts, you're not a bad person because of it. It doesn't make you broken. and you're not alone. Find someone to talk to, find someone to work through that. 988 is a great start. But in working with people that have those type of thought patterns, it's really important to identify where they originate from. And usually it's from an adverse childhood experience. It doesn't have to be a trauma, it doesn't have to be abuse, but it could be just any kind of adverse, and how we perceived, like you said, how we perceive that situation.
Yeah. Where my anger probably kind of stems from is the fact that as a child, I never felt slow or handicapped, but my brother was. And so when he would get angry, I would get angry that he was angry. And you could understand why he would be angry, because he is a handicap, mentally handicapped. And slow. He's not retarded. He's slow. So therefore, he probably gets upset when people don't understand him.
Okay, I was going to say, he's not angry because he's handicapped, but...
Yeah, no, he's angry because probably the lack of understanding of him.
Yes,
and then that leads...
Someone didn't understand him, and that makes
sense. And so I always felt like I was getting the short end of the staff. Like, I would get angry, and then they would be like, no, we're going to punish you too. And so that's where a lot of my anger comes from. But learning that I had to learn to control that.
Anger is an emotion, and we're humans. We get angry. Things are going to make you angry. It's how we handle that anger that we can control, or we need to learn how to control.
Yeah. So if somebody had, like, they're scared of being bit, what are some of the different ways to handle that as a response to trauma?
Therapy has historically had two different, very polarizing ways to address that type of stuff. Let's say that you were afraid of tarantulas. One fork in the road would be a therapy treatment called flooding. And I would lock you in a closet and cover you with tarantulas and leave you there. I don't think that's a good way to provide treatment to people. And I don't think a lot of places do that stuff anymore. Flooding is, I think, an old-fashioned kind of, we've kind of left it in the past, that we're not going to flood people. The other one is something called systematic desensitization. So if you were afraid of tarantulas, we would have a session where you and I would talk about tarantulas, and in the same time process whatever was happening in increases in anxiety, And I would maybe show you a picture of a tarantula, and then we would talk about your heart racing or your body getting warmer or this or that or whatever. And once you were able to manage those symptoms, then maybe I would bring a tarantula to the office, and you'd sit over there and I'd be here. And then we would slowly work on your anxieties and your symptoms until you were able to manage that, and we slowly introduced the tarantula to you.
Is there anything that they can do at home to get started?
Yeah, if someone is afraid of snakes and does not want to be afraid of snakes anymore, look up pictures of snakes on the internet, look up pictures of snakes in books, and do it as long as you can handle it. And when you start to get stressed out, turn it off and put it away for the day. I know people who are afraid of snakes who have never once in their life seen a snake in real life. And I know people who are afraid of snakes because when they were 7, they were playing in the backyard and fell into like a hibernaculum of garter snakes and got bit everywhere. And, we have fears for different reasons, and I would never tell the person who's never met a snake, you have nothing to be afraid of. Like, we have our fears for reasons, and to belittle and make fun of somebody would be wrong.
I do take my lizards to Walmart's.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at a different time.
But it's after taking them to the lake, because I live in this terrible apartment. I don't really have a lot of plans if I move to do this, but it's literally to get them out, get them to the lake so they can get some actual sun. And then instead of bringing them home, I take them to Walmart's on my way so I can save some time. and people at the park and people that won't. I never take them to pet shops or anything because I love my animals and I don't want them to get a disease. And I have had multiple people come up to me and go, dude, I was so scared of it. Oh my God, it's not that bad. It's really cool. It's like, can I hold it? It's like, I'm scared, but can I hold it? It's like, yeah, you just hold, make sure you keep the thing. And it's like, yeah. It's like, dude, thank you so much. I don't know if I want one, but it really helped with my fear. Like to see that. And this is a way for us to connect.
That's an appropriate way to help people connect. I get nervous about animals in public because of the safety concern to people, the safety concern to the animal.
Yes.
The fear of getting scared and running off in Walmart and getting
that's why they get put in totes and they get leashes and they get strapped to a They get strapped to that. Yeah.
I know what those are. I have 3 of them at home.
Yeah. I have a baby stroller that I bought. I actually tie them up to that so they can't run off, and they just love it. They actually do like it because they get out in the sun and they get mental stimuli. And for everybody out there, I recognize when I talk to people and they go, I say, yeah, my bearded dragons are mentally and physically fit. They go, yeah, physically fit's important. Oh, no, I heard that you did not just say mentally fit. I recognize that you do not recognize them for having mental capacity.
Yeah, enrichment is important. Enrichment and stimulation beyond just your basic needs is extremely important for every living.
But it's something when I talked with the lady who had the bearded dragons. Safety.
Yeah, I don't bring my animals to Walmart or the restaurant or the grocery store. I don't do that. I have been guilty of going to a reptile show and buying deli cupped animals and then hey, they're gonna sit next to me in a brown bag at Red Robin or whatever. But I don't like going out. I bring my animals to shows. I leave them in the car and then I come home just because I worry about the safety.
I didn't like this last weekend when I took them out because there was so many people. It was just almost an uncontrollable situation, and I really did not enjoy that. That actually started to piss me off.
And I have insurance in case someone gets bit. But I do work with people who want to do the systematic desensitization route. I'm afraid of snakes, but I really don't want to anymore. And we talk about, well, why are you afraid of snakes? Where did that come from? Did you have a negative experience with the snake? And then looking at it realistically, a lot of people have fears of snakes because they think they're going to get bit and die. And we have a natural aversion to death. We don't want to die. So I get it. And then I'll sometimes tell people I've been bit 800 times by reptiles and I'm still here and I'm still functioning.
Why knowledge is more important than empathy.
Yeah.
Now
I'm running out of time, sir. I have to be cognizant of this. We've been talking for a while, and I could talk to you for a long time.
I know. One thing I really want to go over real quick is when animals die. When my grandfather died, I didn't mourn very long, and I had a lot of different things. It was like I knew he was. When Spike, one of my first bearded dragon, died, I still have problems with it today, and that was well over a year ago.
You know,
I had PT. I came home from work and found him dead, and I was late coming. If I had came home on time with way rigor mortis works, I might have actually been there at the last of his life.
Do you know why that affected you more than your grandfather passing?
I think it was because it was sudden. I think
that's part of it, probably.
I don't know, but I knew that it gave me PTSD, and I feared for over a week that Pitch was going to die because I found fireflies in my house, and so I literally, if I was at work and it was late, and I was tired, I would start crying just because I was so afraid that I would come home and find her dead. I put cameras up, and that's the only thing that helped.
Okay.
And I still today. Now, I have a Peter Bandit skink, I believe. We don't know because they're wild caught. Carrie was one of my first. He has this mark. Male Peter Bandit skinks that I have seen, as they age, they get this spot. It's like being bald is what I compare it to. They get this spot right here in the back of their head, right over their mark. And it carries, where my other ones are this big. carries is like this. It looks like a bird scooped him. So I think he's really old, and I think he's headed downhill.
That's not just an injury? Have you seen that?
No, it's actually bad shed. He has bad shed. That's actually what that's from. It's really fascinating. And here's the thing. So I've been trying to work it out. I've got videos on Instagram where I'm bawling, petting him, because I don't want to lose him.
Yeah.
But I want to know if this is a healthy way of doing this. If I mourn him now while he's alive, is it going to help me when it actually happens? Or is this unhealthy? Is this the best way to go about it? Is there a better way?
I don't think it's unhealthy, or I don't think it's healthy. I think everyone's different. And I think if that's your experience for yourself, that's okay. I do know people who mourn the loss of somebody before they're gone. And it does help them because it's getting that boiling up emotion out of your system. But everyone's different, and it's not a right or wrong thing. Everyone grieves differently. Everyone grieves differently. And you're not, that's...
What kind of things, like the difference in people would lead to the differences in how they should treat it? What could we look in differences in people that would lead them to a different avenue that they might actually try to help them cope?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So nobody's the same, but yet you can kind of box people together in a weird way.
A little bit, yeah.
And so the way that people are, like we were talking about the differences between thinking that suicidal or homicidal or anything like that, differences, people that are more like a dog person or a reptile person, and the differences in those type of people. Would that be something that we could use to tell what might start, not the end, because everybody is so different, that finding the right thing for you, but what's something that the differences would start to try to kind of cope with this?
Oh, that's such a crazy question, man.
I don't ask insane ones.
I don't, yeah, you know, I can only share with you my experiences with grief and with coping with grief. And you know, like both of my grandparents on both of my sides have passed away. And some of that was sudden and some of that was known. My grandmother on my mother's side passed away suddenly from a heart attack when I was younger. My grandfather on my mother's side had cancer, and he died 3 years after his diagnosis. And not one of those deaths was easier or more difficult than the other because of the way we grieve. Knowing my grandfather was no longer suffering and no longer in pain helped me grieve. And it's sad to lose him, but it's good to know that he's no longer suffering. But everyone's kind of different with that too. I would say that you're very attached to your animals, and you define yourself by the level of care and the level of pride and the level of love that you give to your animals. And maybe you and I can have conversations about this where wait, I gotta take a step back. Like, animals die. Like that, I don't mean to say it so roughly, but animals die. Yeah. These animals pass, but it's sad and it's upsetting, especially when it's something that is so dependent on us. And when we lose an animal, I think there's a part of us that wants to blame ourselves. And did I do everything I could do? Was I attentive? Is this death my fault? And I think we can sometimes maybe go too far down a dark path of thought where we're overly blaming ourselves. I think it's okay for us to learn from our mistakes, and we do the best that we can with our animals. You're doing the best job that you can with your animals right now, and I'm sorry you lost your one beardy.
No, I haven't lost him yet.
Okay, but you did lose one, and it's making
no, I did lose my bearded dragon, yes, but I haven't lost my Peter Banded King.
No.
What was interesting when I lost Spike, I was hanging out with a medical student. He just got into a MD program. And I'm like, okay, so I would love to do and I could do it. I know I could. I don't want to do surgery on a live animal because I'm not comfortable closing that up. I'm comfortable doing the surgery. I'm not comfortable closing it. So therefore, I understand what my limitations are. So doing a autopsy on one, I would be fine with. But my buddy told me, he said, don't do it, because no matter what you find, it'll probably never help with the hurt. It'll probably.
I don't know. That's
blaming yourself. Why?
That's a thing that's unique to you. I do know people who lose animals and they bury them in the backyard, or people who lose animals and they get them cremated, or people who lose animals and then they do the necropsy themselves and they preserve the skull on a mount. Like, everyone's different, and if it helps you grieve and it helps you cope,
I don't think that helped me grieve. That would help me solve the problem of what happened to him.
It would do that. I don't do my own necropsies because I don't know enough of the difference of healthy tissue and unhealthy tissue, and I just leave it to my.
I have got to pee. I might just pee in this bottle.
Go ahead. Go run back. No, please don't pee in a bottle in front of me.
I'll try not to.
Go pee.
It sucks being diabetic and old.
I got you.
I'm a pretty simple man. I just want to be able to sit down without making noise.
I got you. I have to wrap things up, sir.
Yes, what I figured.
We could do a part 2 of this conversation in the next week or two.
Yeah, you said the 9th was a good day.
Let me see what's on my calendar. I can follow up with you and do a part 2 on Friday the 9th.
Because we didn't really finish some of this. We didn't go over.
Let me write it down. You wanted to kind of talk more about why reptiles good for mental health?
Child abuse, and why they sometimes wind up as rescues, and why they also might become therapists.
Why reptiles end up in rescues?
No, why child abuse victims later on in life might actually become wildlife rescues, and then why they might actually become therapists. Like, it's kind of probably the same thing. And talk a little bit more about different traumas. I think there was a couple more.
Yeah, I took some notes. We'll follow up next Friday.
Oh yeah. And you might have more answers for me now that you get what I'm thinking and stuff. But remember, empathy's great. Knowledge is better. Who you spend time with is the most important thing.
Yes. Is that your closing phrase?
That's what I would say, but it's,
I think empathy and knowledge are both important.
Oh yeah, empathy's great. Knowledge is important. Who you spend time with is the most important thing. That's going to affect your knowledge and your empathy.
Right. Okay. It was good to catch up with you tonight, man.
Yeah. So my study wasn't worthless.
No, I don't think so far. I think it was.
Yeah.
But I think, you're on your own journey of really trying to figure people out.
Yeah. And that's, hey, at least I'm on this journey. I wish more people would do that. But then also the idea of, okay, so why more normal people, their default setting isn't more empathetic? You can explain why I'm wrong.
No, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that more next time.
Yeah. And we'll invite Lucas as well still.
If Lucas can join, I would love to have a conversation with him.
Yeah, he seems really great. The history of reticulated pythons he just published today, the part 1, and it was really fun to watch the male bonding interaction that they had between the three. It was very much a poke fun at each other.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure lots of people would watch that and go, they're being mean to each other. No, that's how some males bond. It's just, Each its own.
We do that sometimes.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, I felt.
You have an awesome night, man. I will talk to you next week.
Just saying, hey, I love you. You have a great weekend.
You do the same, man. You take care of yourself, bud.
And I love you, audience. Let us know if you think we were wrong on anything, what more you want to see, things like that. I'm going to try to get this out before the 9th so you guys can actually come back and give us feedback on what you actually want to know. Okay, audience? Hey, like, subscribe, and share this because this was an important conversation. We are trying to push not just the community, but everybody into a direction that benefits us all. That's what I'm about.
Right on, right on.
Yeah. Hey, thank you.
You bet, man. You have a good weekend, brother. I'll talk to you
do the
later,
same.
Man. Thanks, man. Bye.